DA's office.
Okay,
You got it. There you go.
okay.
Oh, see, right there.
All right.
Zip.
Brian Steam right here.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, McCoy. I've been him forever. He's so dragged me to all those concerts. Not even like that, but the Redders first, and that's probably the fifth. We went to Kansas Hall. It was,
Uh-huh.
Shooter Jennings, right? Jennings'
Oh,
son.
yeah, yeah.
Shooter, yeah.
Yeah, I like Shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's interesting.
Blake's here, Lester.
Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Have a motion.
Move we approve the agenda.
Moved and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion passes. Next item is the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on that? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. Any public comments, Laura? That were emailed in?
I don't think so. No, nobody sent anything in.
Okay. So under old business, we have ordinance number 1427, or payment of bonded monies. This is the ordinance that Blake, we wanted some more information or waited for you to get back to give us that information from the league.
Certainly. So I spoke with the league about this, basically just sent them the draft of our ordinance to take a look at. The feedback I got from them was, they first wanted to know why we were doing it. Just because they said statutorily our budgets are, they're controlled by statute, so we can't just spend money like crazy. Everything has got to be balanced in there. And I kind of gave them a little bit of the backstory of the reason why. They then suggested possibly doing it as a resolution instead of an ordinance. And then the last thing they said was whether we had checked with our bonding counsel on it, whether we had checked with Gilmore and Bell to see if there was any type of collateral consequences we hadn't thought of about it. I told them no, called Glenn, and I think Glenn was going to reach out to Gilmore and Bell through maybe Baker Tilly to get their feedback on it as well. As far as the enforcement provision of like what happens if it's not followed, their reading of our ordinance basically is not really anything. It's more of guidelines through the ordinance that this is what you're supposed to be doing. But obviously there's not like a fine or any type of offense that arises out of it. I imagine you probably didn't hear back, Glenn, from.
Well, I did talk to Ben Hart today, and he said it'd be a good idea if we did talk with Gilmore Bell, Kevin Cowan. Gilmore Bell had been a bond counsel for a long time, but I did get a hold of him today, so we could do that. Ben's sort of take on this, because I've run it by him before, is that it really is following through reinforcing state statutes that are already in place, so there really isn't anything. There's no real harm to it. I guess that's what Blake is alluding to, is there's some kind of hidden or some unforeseen consequences that we haven't thought of. And I don't really think there is, because we're just sort of reiterating what you would find, basically, we're summarizing what you would find in sort of what is in state law right now, that you have to submit a balanced budget, and when we submit a bond issue, we have to identify a source in that bond issue, because people want to know how you're going to pay back the bonds. And so you already do that in your preliminary statements, which we got one coming up here. We're going to take those temporary notes out to the market as permanent funding here. So you'll see that in the documents themselves. You'll state that your revenue source is this. So nobody's going to buy your bonds unless you do that. So again, you're just kind of reinforcing what's already there in state law, and I don't think there's any real harm to doing this. But again, like you're saying, there's really no enforcement mechanism other than state law, which is already there, and you have to follow that law. So we're pledging to do that.
I think, yeah, the question is, you know, if there's really no enforcement either way, is this just a policy that we'd like to enact similar to, you know, what we're trying to do for, you know, for fund, you know, for just fund balances and does it make sense to go to a full ordinance or just make it a policy that has the same enforcement, you know, or lack thereof that an
Yeah.
ordinance would?
My opinion on it is, it is an ordinance. So again, if somebody wanted to repeal it, they would have to take a vote in front of the public and
Right.
repeal the ordinance. Resolution, you're not.
Yeah, I think the counter to that though is they just don't have to follow it. There's no penalty. They wouldn't have to repeal it. You just wouldn't do it. Without enforcement, it really isn't.
Correct. I know that Blake and, you know, alluded to following state law, but I still believe that this is more direct than state law is. I mean, a balanced budget is only that. I mean,
Right.
we've had bonded money that really wasn't identified or identified 3 different ways in 3 different council meetings before from past staff, and I think this is just a more direct way to get that home. That's my opinion.
The reason I like doing something is it forced the council to come forward publicly with how the bonds are going to be paid. You know, rate increase, fee increase, using reserve funds, combination thereof, where, you know, we might not always do that to the detail that I think would make sense to people. Saying, hey, we're doing a new, you know, we're going to upgrade the wastewater facility, we got to go bond, you know, $1 million to repay that. You know, there's going to be a fee increase or a separate line fee on the bill for the period of the bond of X, and, you know, that goes away. So I think that people have a better understanding of the financial impact, beginning and end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I think what comes to mind the most is I was sitting in this meeting, you know, before mayor, there was a $3.5 million bond issue. Brian and Susan might have been there at this time too. I don't remember, but it was said in the council meeting by somebody that, nope, we won't have to increase utilities. But then when it came to pay back the bonds, it was no, we always intended to increase the utilities. And that was from going from, you know, a citizen to the mayor position. That was a little frustrating to me because I just wish they would have, if the intent when they bonded that money was to increase utilities, then that should have been
Right.
part of that discussion, because then it makes a new council look like, oh, they're just increasing utilities. They just want to, you know, when you don't really have anything to go back on. So
Right.
I guess that was my frustration from that time. Right. So I just don't want future councils to have to deal with that.
So would this count, Laura, as the first reading of this? Is this an actual reading of the ordinance, or is this just a draft?
You looked at this last time.
That's what I was trying to remember.
did.
Okay,
Yeah, this is
Right.
this would be
Gotcha.
technically the second.
thank you.
And I think there's some wording changes even after the first that, you know, I'd like to discuss, if it makes sense, but, you know. So is everything a GO bond or the revenue bonds or the different flavors of bonds? Does this cover all of it?
This covers pretty much all the city.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are general obligation bonds and there are revenue bonds. Those are typically the 2 types that we
Right.
do.
So,
Yeah.
So we're planning to try to cover both those flavors.
And I would think that's the
Okay.
intent of this ordinance.
Because like a GO bond may not have a rate associated with it. You know, there's no fee for police service, right? Because we do a bond to build a police station. We got to identify where it's coming from. And it's not a rate increase of anything, right? It's somewhere else. Whereas if you're doing wastewater or utilities, it's pretty easy to say, well, we're gonna have to increase the rates by X, or add a separate line item just for debt, debt line on the bill of X
Or
until
increase the meter fee.
10-year period where the bond is, and then it drops off. So I guess the wording I was looking at, something like, funding mechanism, including but not limited to fees and rates. Because we could certainly use other funds, reserve funds. Doesn't all have to necessarily be a fee or a rate, I wouldn't think, associated with paying the bond back. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be how you define it, you know, if property tax is defined as a fee or, you know, anything like that, I guess that'd be a turning question, I guess, when you get down into
Yeah, I'm just
that.
trying to get as specific as possible.
Yeah.
Then the last thing I'd suggest I would ask, or at least for discussion, is, you know, the part about the governing body would have to agree to whatever that rate is to fund the bond, right? That's part of what we're trying to do here. And then it says that, you know, future governing body has the ability to, let's say, may authorize the previously increased rates to revert back. I mean, do we want to make it automatic? What's the danger in making it automatic? If Council A says we're funding it with, you know, $1 per water bill for 10 years to pay this debt back, at the end of that, it automatically drops off. The future council has no ability to keep it unless they specifically go back in and put it back in.
I mean,
Kind of sunshine.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
That way we don't have creeping rates and it's too easy to keep it after the debt's paid off and it just kind of snowballs. Yeah. So some kind of sunshine, I think would be, if I'm a citizen, I'd be more comfortable with.
I like that. You get that, Blake, or get the intent of it?
I think I got the intent of it. That was actually one of the things that the attorney at the league mentioned was, and he actually looked at it the opposite way. He actually looked at it and said, would you even want the rate increase to drop back off? Or is it because you're now 10 years or however many years in the future, now that rate increase almost accurately reflects what your cost of water is now at this point or something along those lines.
I thought that through too, but to me, this is a separate cost. I mean, cost of goods, those are going to continue to be included in an annual, you know, if our cost of water goes up, we're passing that on.
Mhm.
But this should be a fixed amount that's clearly definable. So when you just bake it into the rate, it's hard to determine what's still in there. I'd almost suggest a separate line around bond payment.
Well, I think what we discussed during the water, because this really came up during the water
Yep.
stuff, and we had a lot of discussion that really you should, if you're going to bond for water, it should be in your meter fee.
Yep.
So that it's just it's a set, that meter fee covers that, and then the water rate's separate, kind of like what you're talking about. So, yeah, I agree. I think as long as we follow that practice, that if we're going to bond for water, it goes in the meter fee, because, you know, that's been the misconception, I think, in Baldwin is the rates continue to go up, but their meter fee stayed down here. Well, really, the meter fee should have been you know, covering those bonds, because then you can adjust that much easier.
Yeah.
Versus, and the rate should have just went with
Yeah, it's hard to determine what's the cost of the water that we're purchasing versus
the bond.
bond pieces and all that. If we left it in the meter fee, we could define what goes in that meter fee.
Yeah.
And it would move up and down as we, you know, had to bond money and we paid it back.
I agree.
Do
So
you want
Blake,
me to make those
yeah, do you want to
changes in here?
make those
Yeah, but
changes?
what do you guys think? I mean, I think the first question is policy ordinance. Second question is, you know, really kind of, do we want to sunshine it?
Will be a resolution or ordinance.
Resolution or
Ah.
ordinance?
Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts?
I'd like to see what the bond council has to say as well.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Well, either way, we're making changes, so it'll come. back.
Right.
I lean more towards resolution. I was a no vote last time this came up on the last council. A lot of that was based on what the league had told us. They said there was no harm in doing this, but they wondered why we were doing it. I don't think that previous council before that one violated any laws. They balanced the budget. They said some things, but I don't know. They followed what they were supposed to do. So I'm leaning towards resolution and policy rather than an ordinance at this time. But we'll see what bond council says and take it from
Someone gonna get that?
Yeah, I think I'm just opposite of Brian. I just lean towards more for ordinance. I mean,
And you prefer ordinance, so it would have
I
to go
do.
before a vote.
I mean, I just think it has a little bit more teeth. It feels stronger. To me, even though it doesn't have any repercussions if a council doesn't follow it, I understand that, but it's still an ordinance. It still takes a vote to remove it, where a resolution is just.
And I don't disagree with anything in the ordinance. This is what we should be doing as policy. But I agree with Casey, we're on opposite ends on this one.
I agree with Casey, and I like the idea of this being an ordinance, for the same reasons. It just has more teeth. It's going to be followed more easily.
I think for me, that's what I think it lacks is the teeth, right? That is, if somebody doesn't, if a council and mayor don't want to do it, a governing body, I don't know.
Yeah, that was my
But they
concern.
violate
If there's no enforcement, we certainly don't want to expose ourselves to any more risk in a future council not meeting an ordinance that we set up that we just weren't aware of. So I was concerned of the lack of enforcement versus potential risk.
But if a council's not doing what is set out in their laws, I think they should be held accountable. So if there is an avenue, and Blake, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if a council's not following the ordinance, and if some citizen wanted to challenge that in the court, they could challenge it through this method. I mean, they could also challenge it through state law, but
Right.
this
Sure.
is, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I say all of that, the feeling I got from the league was that there aren't really other cities that have this ordinance. It's obviously more common as you go up in kind of government levels, PAYGO type stuff. So I don't have an exact answer, but in general, yeah.
So I guess that, in my mind, how I was thinking about it, that is the teeth. That is the risk that the council does by not following an ordinance, is you could get challenged on
And-
that.
and I
Now, the
can
likelihood
follow-
of that happening,
I can follow up with that kind of specific answer for you at the next meeting.
Julie, Corey, what do you guys think? Ordinance, resolution?
Well, I think if we follow the state rules, then I don't know why we would need an ordinance. So I guess I'm going for a resolution as opposed to an ordinance.
I'm kind of in limbo. I'd like to see what they say. I mean, yeah, it's kind of redundant with, you're violating a statute if you don't follow through, but I can understand it too. If it comes down to one or the other, you want to beef it up a little bit, that makes sense, but let's wait, see what they have to say.
Well, what we'll do, Blake, is we'll go ahead and just make the changes.
And the changes are mainly in just section 2 of the ordinance saying,
Yeah.
instead of may, just the rate or fee shall
Decrease at the.
decrease
Revert or-
once the payment has been.
Yeah.
Okay.
Revert back to, I don't know how you would word that.
Sure.
And I'd probably say rate or fee, because again, if you
Yeah,
get a
If we
meter
go into the
fee,
fees, yep.
Yep.
so.
And then I'll also follow up with the league on the remedies available to a private citizen if it's an ordinance versus that resolution.
Yeah.
And
And
then
then bonding
we'll hear
council.
from bond council by then too, so.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right, next is new business. Pretty much under new business tonight, it's the annual administrative items that are annually every year. Number 1 is ordinance personnel rules and regulations for 2021. Glenn, do you want to just give a brief synopsis of what this covers?
Yeah, that's our personnel rules and regulations. Really, the only change is gonna be the, adjustment in our wage and salary, adjustment.
And that's a COLA.
Yeah, it's a cool stuff.
Yeah, as we adjusted, that's really it. We really didn't change anything else in there unless.
Well,
this is
that
something where
that
it
was a separate, that one's a separate matter.
Yeah.
This is we're on the personnel rules and
Oh, yeah,
regulations,
manual.
right?
Oh, I'm
Right.
sorry, no, they're not the
There
same.
really weren't any updates,
I don't, yeah,
to it.
we've had this for a while, so.
Yeah. I mean, you all had us updated to include the pandemic
Yeah, I'm on
language,
EFIS.
and so
Yeah.
that's the one thing that
Yeah.
was changed in it. I talked to department heads and to our payroll person to see if there were other adjustments that needed to be made, and no one had anything.
And that was what I was going to ask.
That was mine, yeah. E15, shared sick leave and all that stuff.
And
Yeah,
I know that last year, Scott, you had a question about, the confidentiality piece, and
yeah.
we have that in place.
Yep.
And it's clear.
Yep, saw that, thanks.
Any other questions or discussions on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve personnel rules and regulations 2021 ordinance.
Moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, Scott,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Brian? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is resolution 2021-01, salary grade schedule. This is what Glenn was alluding to, the only change.
this one, I was way ahead of it.
Sorry about that.
No, I thought they were within the same thing here, actually, they're not, I see it's a separate resolution here, and we're adopting both. So, yeah, it's just really COLA adjustments, which we like to do this every year. In the past, again, we've had a practice of not doing that, and then 5 or 10 years down the road, we have somebody come in and do a wage and salary study, and and it's usually the people at the bottom of the wage scale who are way out of whack, so then we have to adjust people fairly quickly, and we don't like to do that. So we just want to keep up with inflation and everything else, and what this is, though, is a range. It doesn't require anybody to get a raise or anything like that. You still have to go through the process of evaluations and things like that. So, but this is the range that everybody would fall in, and that's all it is. So, like I said, we like to address this every year, rather than waiting and then jumping tremendously in the future at some point, which is a bad practice.
It's also used as our base when we are hiring. Because we have to have something, to go by for our department heads when making hirings.
Yeah, and then we advertise, if we have a job open, we'll advertise the wage and salary range like anybody else would, so.
I noticed the communications director job was not on here.
It is not, and it will be added.
Okay.
So min and max, both COLA, just on both ends of that.
Right.
And what was COLA this year?
2%
We did 2%.
is what the council approved.
I think with the discussion we had in strategic planning about, retention, I think it's a good practice to stay competitive and retain good employees.
When they get a second part of their raise too from their evaluations.
Right.
Per year, so this is just for the cost of living side of it.
Yep, their merit increases are up to 2%.
They're not automatic.
They are not automatic. The COLA is the only thing that's automatic. As long as the council continues to want to do that.
Right.
And the employees really appreciate it. I'll speak for them all.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
No, I agree with Scott. I think it's a great practice. Every job I've ever had that did a COLA match was so great.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve resolution 2021-01, salary grade schedule.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is resolution 2021-02, Kansas Homeland Security hazard mitigation plan.
You just want to read through the whole thing real quick?
Yeah.
On page 4,
I'll actually delegate that to you, Corey.
Well, I had a question about that. I actually did read through it. And it said that Baldwin City participated in this mitigation plan. Do we have someone that's designated to do that?
I believe that falls under the fire department, the fire and police. Glenn?
Did we have somebody,
We did. I was part of
It
that.
was, yes,
I was
you
part
were.
of that group. I don't know if the chief was here at that time. So it would have been Terry Baker.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was Ashley Chief, and I think we had a former public works director that was in on that too.
Yes.
So there was a team of people here. So this is how many years ago when they actually started this? I forget exactly what, 3-4 years ago when they started it now. So this you're seeing the end product of that. But yes, we were included in on it. And I'm not sure how many meetings they had on that, but it's an update of a plan, and you know, so I don't think it changed a lot, but they did put a lot of work into it.
So do we have a plan for disaster response in Dalton City?
We do.
I think we talked a little bit about this in the safety committee.
Yeah, it's something Lynn's working on.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's a finished product.
Talking a specific communication plan or just full plan?
Well, yeah, a communication plan as far as who's gonna be, you know, the head of that and get everything.
We had started working on that pretty heavily a few years ago. Chris Croucher had started it years before that, and then it just kind of fell behind a little bit. And then when I started, he asked me if I could help with that. So I involved Douglas County. They have a program that's put together. Now it's left my plate, and it's on Lynn's plate. And so she's kind of working on that now.
Okay.
It's a
I
it's a
just
work in
don't-
progress.
I just don't want it to drop, because I think it's really important.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Move we approve resolution 2021-02, Kansas Homeland Security Hazard Mitigation
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, council committee reports, budget and finance, Scott.
Didn't have a meeting since last council meeting. Next meeting is Friday, this Friday the 7th
Yes.
at 7:45 a.m., second floor City Hall.
Friday the 8th.
8th.
This Friday.
Do, the date.
Yes, the 8th.
Community development, Corey.
Yeah, I got a couple things. First, I'll start off on the Bauer group, the advisory group. We haven't met for a bit. We had the last meeting where we went through the comments. Was kind of our last update that we were going to go through the comments that we'd received on that last survey. And then we had the long holiday, so the advisory group is going to meet this week, Thursday at 4. And I think the plan is to present at the next council meeting. The advisory group will present at the next council meeting and ask the council for a resolution to discuss the April ballot. Main Street had a lot of movement on that actually over the holiday. So today we met with the chamber director and president. We met with Mandy and George. They're both really enthusiastic and optimistic about Main Street. They think that they could really benefit the chamber quite a bit from it. Mandy's in fact serving on the application committee as the chamber director. Got a lot of action from the downtown businesses. They're super excited. We have 9 on the committee, or on the application committee, 9 business and nonprofit heads. We're meeting Saturday on the 9th at 11. That'll be our first sort of meeting coming together and basically just trying to figure out how we want Main Street to look before we apply, on the 29th, and kind of how it's going to interact and coexist with the chamber. This is all obviously contingent on getting in. It's pretty competitive. And there would also need to be a council resolution on our meeting next meeting. So there's a lot of movement in between. The 29th is the deadline. But we're on a good pace. I'm excited that we have the chamber enthusiastic about it as well. Susan and I are in the process of calling around there's 25 Main Streets communities in Kansas, and I called a bunch of them, but I only got hold of 3 of them the other day, and kind of asking them how their relationships with their chambers are. How do you guys coexist? How are the fees here versus that? Everybody just kind of does it differently, and the program, the last governor cut the funding for the program, so it was gone for 8 years. So a lot of communities who had gotten into Main Street just kind of winged it, without the guidelines and the sort of oversight of the Kansas branch. And so now this year, Governor Kelly's added a third. Usually 2 get in a year. There's going to be 3 this year trying to play catch up. So I think people are going to be getting their ducks more in a row and seeing maybe just coming a little bit more consistent with how Main Street kind of wants to see things done. So there were productive conversations. I talked with Emporia, Seneca, and Marysville, and they all just kind of do things differently, have different structures of how they go about it. So we also talked about setting up a trip to Emporia to kind of check out how they do things. Emporia's kind of the nationally recognized as somebody who really nails their Main Street program. So like I said, the deadline's the 29th. It does need to go, I think, to the budget committee once we have an idea of what that funding mechanism is going to look like, and if they're going to be the same, they're going to be separate, kind of rolled into one. So that's what the 9th meeting is going to be about. And then once we get a little bit more clearer picture, we'll send it to budget and then
So
council.
we might have to add a budget committee meeting before.
I think we have that one on the 22nd that was going to iron.
Well, we'll have our council meeting before that,
You're right. Okay.
so we'll have to have one this Friday and next Friday.
Yep. Okay. Yes, let me put that on the agenda for that meeting.
I'm sorry, I was Casey gave me a look.
Sorry, there's a lot.
Public safety,
We have not met, so I have no updates. Next meeting is January 12th at 4 o'clock.
public works and utilities, Julie.
We talked about the outages that the city's been having, and they told us that they didn't really find any problem with our equipment. They put a part in there that could record what the outages were and kind of where they were coming from. They didn't find any problem with our end of it, so Evergy was examining their feeds to see if it was their problem, not ours. The additional solar field information is still being gathered. The transformer for Casey's should be in by March 15th. And they're still working on the car wash, obviously, you can see that when you drive by. They had a problem getting information from the solar meters to do billing, but they said that that's now 90% fixed, which is good, so. The mixer for the water tower is being held up by the state. They're not sending us a permit to do that. And finishing up on the interceptor. Chip and seal for 2021, they may be able to tag on to the county, so that'd save us some money in the long run. There's no update on the rural water of Franklin #1, and there's no update on the Elm Street Benefit District. I did receive a list of priorities from the department heads of what they're looking at for the next few years. And our next meeting is January 21st at 9 o'clock.
Legislative committee, Brian.
We met a couple weeks ago. Wendy Conover from the library visited and gave us some new information about district libraries. And it appears that if we hit that 5,000 mark, it's really slim to none that we could become a district library, that we would need to remain a city library. But we'll keep an eye on that and keep talking with the library about what they're thinking and looking at. We also met with Rob Coley. He came to us with some ideas for ordinances about various issues dealing with utilities, burying lines, cable, fiber, those kinds of things. Those have been passed on to Blake, and we'll start to talk about those things in committee. Some of those things might not be possible, we're not sure, but we'll keep you updated as we go. And then we also talked about strategic plan. So I will be sending to Laura and staff a little activity for you guys to do before our work session on the 26th, and it will also have the agenda, so you'll know what to expect. We had identified in our planning session that we met at the retreat, we had 9 areas that we identified as economic development. Some of those are going to bleed over from quality of life, like the community center, but I think it's good that we include that in what we're doing at the end of the month. So there'll be some charts that you can fill out. That way we can start to see, do these projects meet our vision statement, which will be on there too. So look for that here. Hopefully I can get that to you this week, Laura, and she can send it out to council. Our next meeting's on January 20th, 8 o'clock.
Staff comments? Anything?
Just an update there on those outages. We did find in the last outage that we did have a problem at our substation, and there are some replacement parts that should be coming in here within the next week to at least address the problems on our side here. And will that solve all the problems? We don't know. We still don't know if there's any problems outside our system, but they did find a couple of aging pieces of equipment that need to be replaced, and we'll be doing that here shortly. So hopefully that will mitigate a lot of those intermittent outages that we have there. And I could try to tell you what those nature of those problems are, but I probably should leave that to professionals who know a lot more about that than I do. So, but anyway, we will be fixing that. And of course, the substation, the new substation is still under study. I haven't heard anything since our last meeting that we had on the utilities on that, so I haven't heard any more about that. And we are still gathering some more information about possible another possible solar project for us. So we've talked to the school and we've talked with Evergy about that. So I think we're getting down the road a little bit on that. So we're making some progress and see what's available out there. It seems like the prices of solar are dropping every day, but we'll see what we get at that point. So that's all I can think of.
I have something exciting to say. I know. Today, our city administrator announced this day as the last day. The holidays are officially over because all the lights are being taken down downtown. And so that's a thing, in our office we talk about. So the lights have been taken down, but I want to share with the council the number of comments, and I'm sure you probably have heard them as well, on how beautiful the lights are and how each year, with a few little additions that are made, people just absolutely love those. So hats off and applause to the council for continuing that idea of brightening up our downtown. Christmas, Mayor Semino.
I was dealing with the Grinch when I first started. Apparently Santa Claus.
Actually, the Grinch decided that Christmas was over.
Yeah, he's the one who literally started it all.
I thought that was the exciting announcement. It's not good. That's not up to me. That's up to the Grinch. That's a Grinch duty.
All right, any council comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion be adjourned.
Second.
Been moved in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay, motion passes.